Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Adaptation Games, and may the odds be ever in your favor. We're the Adaptation Games, a Hunger Games podcast, where we are taking a look at the Hunger Games books, their adaptations into the film series, and their place in our media landscape. My name is Kels.
And I'm Ash.
We believe the Hunger Games series is one of the best examples to demonstrate exactly how you should think about adapting books to screen. We don't claim to be experts. Neither of us have written books or scripts, but we just love to overanalyze every moment of a series we adore.
And this is the perfect excuse to really put our college degrees to work. I finally get to annotate books for a purpose and think about things a little too hard.
Yeah, and I get to lecture very broadly about what I remember about my social movements, sociology classes and degree, and tie it back into, maybe some stuff that's going on in the world or stuff that has gone on in the world.
We'll be talking spoilers for the whole Hunger Games series through Mockingjay and the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. With Sunrise on the Reaping, we may mention some connected themes and moments, but try not to discuss any specific plot points. If we are going to dig into it, we'll give a spoiler warning in the episode. That way, if you're a movie-only enjoyer, you can still go in blind this November.
Yeah, we're really excited for that to come out. We may also discuss the script, which was a collaboration effort with Billy Ray, Gary Ross, who is the director of the first film, and Suzanne Collins. Billy Ray is coming back to write the script for Sunrise on the Reaping this November. He already wrote it because they're already filming, but very excited to see where that may go. Today, we're going to be taking a look at so much.
We are establishing. This is the kickoff to everything. The audience knows nothing about the Hunger Games or Katniss or let alone the Capitol. So this is one of the most important moments of the entire books and the entire series.
Yeah. And so we're going to be taking at the first 20 pages and the first 20 minutes of the film. And that is of, what is the total? It's about 10%, right, of the overall narrative. But we are going to be packing in so much for basically what is such a small portion of both the book and the movie. We are trying to establish the Hunger Games themselves, what they are, the difference and the relationship between the capital and the districts, Katniss as a character, music, her relationships to Gale, her mom, and Prim, the Mockingjay as a symbol, the overall vibes of the setting, and like a few other thematic setup points.
Yeah, and looking at it, there's at least 8 different major establishing moments. Especially looking at the movie, this is all happening within 20 minutes that you need to have happen quickly enough for the audience to stay in it.
Yeah, and at least half of those things are going to happen in the first 2.5 minutes of the movie. So, like, we're going to cover 5 different moments within the first 2.5 minutes, which is what, like, 30 seconds a moment, essentially. Less, more. It happens quick. We're going to see how that matches up with what is being established in the book versus what's being established in the movie, because we're going to trade some information around, right, for better flow for the different mediums.
Yeah, it was a remarkable task to take on a first-person book because Katniss is an extremely unreliable narrator, and the books are only in her head, so you have to imagine the world that's happening around her, and you can't rely on the books for that because she doesn't care. And that's fair, honestly. Whereas the movie is like, okay, we need audiences to know what's happening because in a visual medium, we're not in her head, we're not hearing her thoughts. So we do actually like need to know a little bit about how the world works. Whereas Katniss, that's already established, and anytime she's returning to it is like something's happening that's prompting that, and she just mentions offhand and then focuses on something else.
Yeah. Exactly. So really we should just jump right in. We'll start with is the very beginning minute of the Hunger Games, the very opening frame. We open on the Treaty of the Treason. They give it to us in 4 black screens. It's from the Treaty of the Treason. As penance for their uprising, each district shall offer up a male and female tribute between the ages of 12 and 18 at a public reaping. These tributes shall be delivered to the custody of the capital and then transferred to a public arena where they will fight to the death until a lone victor remains. Henceforth and forevermore, this pageant shall be known as the Hunger Games.
It's so interesting from the jump. The language they use is very significant, saying male and female versus boy and girl, calling it a pageant straight up.
The book does not even give you the name The Hunger Games till page 6, right during the reaping.
Yes.
And then it cuts straight into an interview with the Capitol where they are going to discuss this treaty. Seneca Crane, whose name we don't get yet, is talking about how this is our tradition. It comes from a particularly painful point of our history, but it's a way for our country to heal. And it really knits us all together. And honestly, just looking at that, this is 1 minute, right? And we are already establishing so many things that we're not going to get in the book yet.
Yeah, it was interesting returning to the books because, you know, my memory of the movies is very like she wakes up and then it's immediately reaping day. But the books, there's actually a significant amount that happens before that, and in the movie as well.
Yes, in the movie, the big thing, right, when you're adapting to a visual medium, when you're coming off of a written medium, is that you're building tension in an entirely different way.
The book, you don't even get an understanding that this is a death game for kids until page 18. So we're opening it up and we're establishing this stuff in order to kind of like try and put us in a place where we're going to understand what's really going on, kind of putting us into Katniss's shoes. It's going to set up so much for later, like Gale's ranting in the woods and Seneca's interactions with Snow.
Yeah, the film really needs this to help set the tone. Whereas in the book, you know, when I hit the reaping scene, there's that whole paragraph that actually explains it. But if you do that in the movie, I feel like disrupting the tension of the scene where it's like this long diatribe about like what's actually happening when by that point you should already know.
Yeah, and in the movie you can't really do that because we can't hear her, right? And we wouldn't really understand what the power dynamic is going on here. Whereas Katniss, she's lived it her whole life. So she's running around and she's like, man, this sucks. The Capitol's doing all these horrible things to us. But unless we have the Treaty of the Treason first, we're not going to have any of that context. So that's why the movie moves it up so much in order to be like, this is the first thing you're going to see. And also we're going to get it from the point of view of the Capitol, right? Of how are they viewing the games? They're viewing it as sport, as something that knits the country together. And then, like, what does that mean, right? We're already thinking about it.
Because, like in the books, that's established because of the way that she talks about the peacekeepers. She rarely talks about the Capitol other than this sort of distant thing that doesn't really matter. But she's like, oh, but the peacekeepers, they have money to buy the like nicer meats. They have resources versus, you know, in the rest of District 12 and in the Hob, no one has resources. And we've already in the movie established that relationship between the Capitol and the district just in that first bit where we see how fancy and nice the Capitol is, and then we cut to how the districts are treated.
Yeah, and they're using every tool at their disposal for filmmaking, right? Where you get the colors and how it looks, the polish, the facial hair. You're seeing the technology of the interview, and this is a set camera, right? It's steady, it's unshakable, it's detached from what's happening in the interview. Whereas we're gonna switch over to desaturated colors, handheld cameras, close-ups, very personal shots and angles. And we get my favorite cut of the movie, one of my favorite cuts, which is the hard cut from the question of what defines your personal style to Prim screaming awake and to an external establishing shot of District 12 where you can see it's a broken down mining town, clearly very different from the technological setup of the interview that we just saw. And also it's a little girl screaming awake from a nightmare saying, it was me, they picked me. And an older girl who is saying like, it's okay, Prim, your name is only in there once, they're not going to pick you, right? This is Katniss and Prim, we're getting them right off the bat. And we also get the Meadow song here, where she asks Katniss to sing her back to sleep, and she does. She starts singing here the Meadow song. I'm not going to sing it for you because I don't have a great singing voice. We see her say, I gotta go. And she pulls on her leather jacket as a cat hisses at her. And she says, I'll still cook you, which is very different from her soft tone with Prim.
That hard cut to Prim's screen, even and the poverty of this small town is immediately establishes the Capitol as the enemy. Because, I mean, we haven't seen any rebellion or anything in this small town yet, but we have already seen oppression. Prim is awake in the movie, unlike in the book, because they want to immediately establish that Prim-Katniss dynamic of, you know, like Katniss is very much taking care of Prim. She doesn't interact with anyone for several pages in the book. Katniss just kind of goes on her own.
I think she talks about Buttercup for like almost a page. She just is describing that Buttercup is like an ugly cat and that she hates him, but then he catches vermin, and so she was like, I guess you can stay, which is really her way of establishing in the book her relationship with Prim because she just could not refuse Prim to keep this cat, even though she was like, why? Why would we do that? But this way, they're immediately establishing it without us having to be like, Katniss is just getting ready to go into the woods by herself, right?
Absolutely.
And the next most important thing, obviously, that we're getting now that in the books we won't get until much later is the Meadow song. This is super important to establish right now because we don't get a mention of music being important to Katniss until like page 43, I think, when she's talking about her dad and how he used to sing in the house. But we don't actually get any mention of the Meadow song until Rue is dying later on like page 243. Much later in the book, she's having a whole inner monologue, right? Where she basically is seeing Rue as Prim in that moment, right?
Yeah. Whereas the movie establishes immediately because it knows where it's going.
Yeah, I'm going to read the passage. Sing, she says, but I barely catch the word. Sing, I think. Sing what? Believe it or not, there was once music in my house, too. Music I helped make. My father pulled me in with that remarkable voice, but I haven't sung much since he died, except when Prim is very sick. Then I sing her the same songs she liked as a baby. Sing, my throat is tight with tears, hoarse from smoke and fatigue. But if this is Prim's, I mean, Rue's, last request, I have to at least try. The song that comes to me is a simple lullaby, one we sing fretful, hungry babies to sleep with, but the words are easy and soothing. So, in the movie,
You're not going to get any of that monologue when Rue is actually dying.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine during her death scene, like, a voiceover comes in and Katniss is like, oh yeah, by the way, this is the song.
That would, yeah, I think that would break the immersion of the scene. It also makes sense, at least in the book side, because why would Katniss be thinking about music at all in this initial bit? She is quite literally only thinking about survival.
Yeah. So where do we have to establish that? Because we only get about 5 to 10 minutes, maybe, of screen time with Prim before that, which is right now. This is the only time we're going to get the two of them together. And so basically what they do is they set it up right now so that when she sings this song to Rue later in the movie, you can immediately be like, oh, okay, this is what's happening. That she's remembering Prim in this moment.
Yeah, movies have the advantage of having actual, faces and pictures, moving pictures, as it were. So, establishing that visual language is extremely effective versus, the book really needs to tie it to themes that you've already run into, but you can have that inner monologue. I think it's interesting how establishing music so early, the movie removes some of Prim's foreshadowing of how strong and creative that she is. In the book, I mean, she's got a goat, she's providing for the family a little bit, like
Right.
she's very, very inventive, and she's someone that builds community, whereas Katniss sort of goes on her own. I mean, she accidentally builds community, but,
Right.
but
She just doesn't know how to admit it.
No. But yeah, so Prim has it establishes very caring Prim in that she has this cat that doesn't seem to like anyone, but she still takes care of, and she has this goat that's kind of her passion project. So it is interesting how, in order to establish Katniss's and Prim's core relationship, they have to remove some features of Prim's strengths, essentially. What we're seeing is Katniss's view of Prim. So Katniss does see Prim as more helpless than she is because Katniss has just been in pure survival mode for forever.
Yeah. And her thought is just Prim. Everything is Prim.
Yes.
Prim this, Prim that. Is Prim going to make it to tomorrow? Is Prim hungry? Like that's the only thing that matters. That's her baby girl. She's like, that's my ride or die. Like I will do. I'm gonna die for her. I'm gonna kill for her. I'm gonna do whatever I have to do for her.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So she just sees her as that little girl forever and ever. So then next scene we get her leaves the house, and then she's running through District 12. This is where we kind of get to see all of what the district looks like. And again, we're getting that contrast between the capital and the districts. This takes like a couple pages in the book where she's describing what the theme is like. But what we see as she jogs through is the most vibrant colors, the trees of the district, but an incredibly slow-paced Appalachian lifestyle. People are walking slowly through the streets with buckets or hanging out in really broken down houses. We see somebody cleaning dust from their hands, scrubbing it in a bucket of water, kids playing in the dirt with like sticks and mud, with shoes that are clearly very old. And then we see the miners walking home behind Katniss as she jogs away from them. And she is clearly the most well-dressed and cleanest person in the area. Like her leather jacket, her leather boots. She looks cleaner than the rest of the miners who are covered in coal dust. And then we see somebody sitting in the street eating really small bones. And we get out of the fence, and Katniss is in the forest where the colors just become brighter, right? Like it's super green. Everything feels really saturated. You can hear the birds more. And she goes and she gets her bow and arrow, and we get to see her be really good at hunting, essentially, doing all the little tricks.
Her in her element.
Yes.
But yeah, we get to literally see her in her element. The shaky cam, everyone's talked a lot about the shaky cam.
Yeah.
It's a little much. There's a certain amount of like handheld shakiness. This is like someone's on a riding bowl, one of those like little mechanical bowls. You're like, oh my God, it's a little much. But it continues that trend of the separation between the capital and districts visually.
Mm-hmm.
There's, we got Seneca's crazy hair and Caesar Flickerman's crazy hair.
Yeah.
But here, there's nothing really happening. It's completely desaturated, and everyone just looks tired and old. It seems like kind of lifeless.
Yeah. And we don't even need to see that, like, Katniss having a bow and arrow and these nice clothes is already setting her apart from the rest of the district. Like, in the book, she takes a while to talk about how the bow was made by her father, how it's a rarity. He probably would have been arrested and hanged for making them for other people in the district. Like they're just so rare. But I think you can already tell there's nobody out there like Katniss in her own district, just visually. So her running out into the woods to get this bow, you're like, oh, this is different from everybody else in her area,
Yeah, and this really is, despite the crazy camera work, this is exactly how District 12 should feel. Although we never end up getting the name, the seam, as we do in the books. Like, there's a pretty clear divide between the upper and the lower class. Here, you can tell, like, capital is upper, district is much lower.
Yeah, and we don't really need to know about all the internal politics of the district because, again, what we're focusing on is capital versus district, right?
Yeah, and we're here in the district for like maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a very small portion of the film.
Yeah. And we're going to leave it, and we don't really have time to get into the nuance of it. I'll say this, people already don't understand the nuance of it. People hate the career tributes as if they're not also kids being groomed to be in these games. But that's like what they want you to think, right? So there's just less room for nuance when you only have 2 hours and 22 minutes versus 10 and a half hours to really dive into what does that internal politics system look like.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like the 10 and a half hour version, you're stuck in Katniss's head, and she's a remarkably unreliable narrator, but she's doing her best.
She's also like, everybody hates me. I hate everybody. I've never had friends. Nobody's ever liked me. And then later on, she'll be like, oh my gosh, do people care that I'm gonna like go die? That's crazy. I never thought about that.
Katniss, we love you. You gotta take a breather.
And because we're not in Katniss's head and we're not going to get all this kind of additional exposition from her, what we get is Gale instead. So he gets introduced, we see him before we hear him, where he's like, what are you going to do with that when you kill it? He interrupts her shooting the deer. We get his name. Damn it, Gale, that's not funny. And what are you going to do with a 100-pound deer, Catnip? He doesn't call her Katniss in this moment. Basically, he becomes Exposition Dump Central. The place is crawling with peacekeepers. I was going to sell it to some peacekeepers. Like, you don't sell to peacekeepers, yada, yada. All this back and forth is just Exposition Dump Central. He kind of is like that in the book as well.
Yeah, he gives us the peacekeeper name, which is very important. We get that they have money because they are able to purchase a 100-pound deer. And they have it also establishes that, like, the districts do have a transactional nature with the peacekeepers, not a friendly one, but there are, some ways around where the peacekeepers there can be a little bit beneficial. And we also get that Gale has extremely strong values. He doesn't want to sell to them today because it's reaping day, whereas Katniss is like, here's another day to survive. let me go get a deer. It really shows also how the districts kind of see it. The districts are not fooled by this facade, even though they don't have necessarily room to rebel.
Yeah. But a giant ship flies overhead while they're hunting, and they immediately have to go and take cover. Get a cut back to see Effie now arriving in the district. She's walking around, she's inspecting the town square, clearly a look of disgust on her face, and we'll talk about Effie because we love her.
Shout out to Elizabeth Banks, the role of a lifetime.
Shout out! Oh my god.
I mean, this we have to give it to her because, like, her performance of Effie, it's just so endearing.
She literally wrote a note to Gary Ross. She like writes him a letter, and she's like, "I will be playing this role. You will be giving it to me. I am Effie. Here are all the reasons I'm Effie. Give me the role."
I mean, she's immediately establishing her walk.
Oh my gosh,
there's
incredible.
just so much of Effie in her walk, like the way that her like shoes shake. Astonishing.
Yeah, her like little kabuki, I believe is what it's called, the lip, making it look like her lips are constantly pursed in disgust. Her and her makeup artist did a great job collaborating on figuring out that look for her.
Extraordinary.
But anyways, so we see them looking at this Effie bright splash of color on the gray backdrop, and we see the cleaning crew who is in all white, super clean compared to the rest of the district. They're hanging flags, and seeing that contrast between the workers in all white and sort of like so opposite to the rest of District 12, like this is setting up the reaping, and it's already kind of giving you a feeling of dread of like, oh man, we're gonna be there soon, even if we don't know what reaping day is quite yet. Like we saw in the intro that it says like at a public reaping, but not having any idea what that entails, like just seeing how it's getting set up is nerve-wracking almost. We cut back to Gale saying, he's immediately ranting. He's saying, what if they did? What if one year everyone stopped watching? And we're going to hear Katniss trying to kind of moderate his tone a little bit, kind of laughing at him. And clearly she thinks it's kind of ridiculous that he thinks that they can change anything about the Hunger Games.
In addition to getting a feel for their relationship, where Katniss lets Gale rant about the games, it sort of establishes Katniss's relationship with rebellion, because she's very much like, yeah, you can rant and rave out here, but it doesn't actually do anything, and nothing ever changes. And that's her whole like shtick. She's like, why would I protest? Why would I change anything? Why would I even try? Because it's not going to change anything. And it actually hurts and gets in the way.
Yeah, it gets in the way of her putting food in Prim's mouth, which is at the end of the day the only thing that matters to her.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I think the book established that Katniss also just doesn't. She stopped talking about rebellion when she realized that Prim might repeat what she says. So it's not that Katniss agrees, but she knows that if she says anything, even at home, that Prim might repeat it, and then that gets into the whole issue.
Yeah. And it's even more interesting because Katniss doesn't know the history of District 12. She doesn't care about the history of District 12. We're not going to get any of that until Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping. So she doesn't even necessarily, she knows that like the Capitol will punish full families for indiscretion, but mostly she doesn't know Haymitch's story. She doesn't know what happened to his family, despite the fact that her mom was close with him. But she still is so fearful that she knows that that's putting Prim at risk, right? That it just isn't worth it.
But they have their conversation about them running away. We get the, they would cut out our tongues or worse from Katniss. And they're essentially giving us more information. She has Prim, he has his brothers, and Katniss is the one to bring up kids. She says, I'm never having kids, and is like absolutely shocked by his answer when he says like, I would. And she's like, why? Like that's, the Hunger Games exist. And then we also get the fact that the districts are heavy on trading because he brings out a fresh piece of bread. She's immediately like, how did you get this? He's like, I traded a squirrel for it. This is the only time that we get like a steady camera, is when they're sitting there having this conversation for a couple of seconds, where it's a peaceful backdrop. It's the only place that Katniss feels steady.
Yeah, this is the only time we'll see her relaxed.
Gale says to her in the book, or she's thinking about how in the past he has said, I never smile except in the woods. We might not get the line from her in the movie, but we do see that this is the only time she's smiling, is here in the woods with Gale, and then the only other time she'll smile is when she's in the woods with Peeta later on in the film. And he makes the joke about taking her bow. It's the only other time she smiles because it feels like the closest to being back home to her. So we meet Gale, and he's just dropping exposition bombs, but in conversation and building the relationship with Katniss.
He does have some uses, I suppose. But, yeah, and her day-to-day life is just, how do I take care of my family, and how do we make it to the next day? So the idea of rebellion just seems completely out of line.
Yeah, and when she brings up Prim as her reason for staying, now combined with the scene earlier of us watching her, soothe Prim back to sleep, she's so soft with her, very different from the way she's talking with Gale, very different from the way she yelled at Buttercup, right? It's one of those things that in the book, even she's like, oh, I guess I'd have to bring my mom too, but we're not getting that in the film. She's just like, Prim is my reason for staying. And you just know that that's it. Like, this must be her whole reason for kind of existing here. And so I think it makes it even more powerful that she goes straight into the I'm never having kids line, despite basically being like, but I would do anything for Prim. Because if it was her choice, she would have never brought Prim into the world to live like this under the Capitol. She loves Prim, would die for Prim, would kill to get home to Prim, but she would have never, ever wanted Prim to live the life that she currently is living.
No, yeah, if there was another option to get Prim, into something better, she would probably do it. But there's no option for mobility in the districts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the books, they're talking about their kids. And when Gale says he wants, she's thinking like, absolutely not. And then two, like, why would he even bring that up? There's been no amount of romance between them. And she's super not, she's like, what are you talking about? You could be my brother. Like, we look so alike. But a lot of people who watch without reading the book see the scene as like they are in a relationship. I mean, let's be real, Jennifer Lawrence and whatever
Liam Hemsworth. Yeah. One of the Hemsworths, you could say.
One of the Hemsworths. Liam Hemsworth, they have great chemistry. Like, they read so well on camera. So it's not, out of a unfair assumption to take. But in the books, it's pretty well established that you can assume from Katniss's view, like, we don't know what Gale's thinking because we're in Katniss's head, but Katniss is like, what are you talking about, dude?
Yeah. She's like, I might have brought up kids, but why are we talking about this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the only other big thing that he drops is that his name is in the drawing 42 times today, which I know if you don't have any context, you're like, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean your name is in 42 times today? And you can tell that it's making Katniss really nervous because we're not going to get the whole Tesserae discussion from her in her head when they go to visit Madge in the books. And now we're going to go to the Hob to trade. We might not ever get the name of the Hob, but we don't really need to. We just need to see what's going on in this area. We get an establishing shot of it, and then, again, a look at what the people of District 12 are like. We're getting close-up shots of their hands, very dirty. A lot of kind of older people who are really wrinkled and clearly have worked like hard labor for a lot of their lives. Goods are exchanging hands, but it's nothing fancy, like buttons and what look like pretty broken down, what are they called? Appliances? There we go.
Oh, lordy.
Like broken down appliances. Katniss is, again, the cleanest and best dressed person in the room, clearly. She's also the youngest, from what I can tell when you're kind of scanning through it. And she is trading berries for like a string of some sort. And the lady, who's likely meant to be Greasy Say, says, "Thank you, girl." And this is where Katniss looks down and sees a pin. Intrigued, she asks what it is. That's a Mockingjay. She asks how much, and she answers, "You keep it, it's yours." And she gives Katniss a sad look, where clearly it's kind of like, today already sucks. Go ahead and take it.
You might get picked.
Yeah. It's obviously very different from in the books, from how she gets the pin. And I think one of the things that could have worked really well in the film is that, Prim leaves Katniss some cheese for Reaping Day, and she takes that, and her and Gale are celebrating in the woods. And it would have worked, I think, as like Katniss thinking, oh, look, I found like a return gift to give to Prim. I think it would have helped with a lot of the issues that people have with the fact that it's not Madge giving the pin to Katniss, which I know a lot of people are always really bummed about.
Yeah. I wonder too if that would have been a distraction though, because that's establishing, okay, how did Prim get, we have established this place is very bare bones. So there's, very little food. Katniss is the food giver. She's essentially like the reason why they're alive. So Prim suddenly having a goat with cheese in a movie would be a distraction. And then also, I think, in a way, it makes the audience less scared when Katniss goes off to the Hunger Games, because you're like, oh well, Prim can fend for herself. She has a goat. She has some source. Whereas, in the movie, it's sort of like we don't, because we're kind of living Katniss's view, we don't know how Prim and her mom actually like live without Katniss.
Right, right. Yeah, and this is why they cut out some of the like people coming to see her later. So
Yeah.
you're right. People would be like, "How does she even have cheese?" Because we probably aren't even showing the goat. Like we don't even know it's goat cheese.
We just showed in a shaky cam sort of a guy sucking on a tiny bone.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of like in the film that it's from the community itself. That though, initially she's not really like looking after the District 12 community on purpose. She is in a way by providing food and supplies or whatever, but her focus is Prim. But ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to be that community that raises behind her.
Yeah, agreed. And then visually as well, just kind of like the Mockingjay pin and then Mockingjays in general have a really rich history, right, within Panem. And it's really important to what it ends up representing within the revolution. But also, like, there's symbology all the time in social movements that you don't really need the full context for. So, like, the Black Panther logo for the Black Panther Party, right? The raised fist. Like, that has over a century's worth of history behind it before it even gets to the Black Panther Party using it as a symbol for revolution. But, like, I'm not even going to talk about it because I don't know enough of that history, but it's there, right? In that it took all of that time for it to really start representing nowadays solidarity. And so the Mockingjay kind of operates the same way within Panem, where it's like, okay, great. We, the reader, gets to eventually know all of this history about the Mockingjay. We get to know about Snow's relationship with the Mockingjay, the Capitol's relationship with Mockingjays, and then like Katniss's family's personal relationship to this Mockingjay pin. But nobody else in universe is going to know that. So why would we, as a viewer, also know it? We just need to know that it's something from District 12.
Yeah, the importance will come to the pin. Like the pin itself is not important. It's the importance that later is put upon Katniss and upon this pin. The Mockingjay is not a powerful symbol currently. It will become one because of Katniss's actions and also the things that happen around her that she reacts to.
Yeah, the fact that it comes from the community, it feels so much more organic that way. It is so interconnected in the books, like the fact that even in the script, I'll bring up the original pitch script too, is that they have Katniss's mom give it to Prim, which I think is interesting because like you're keeping it as a family heirloom. It's then also still connected to Maisley and Sunrise, and it's still related to the Covey at that point because one of the Covey members makes the pin for Maisley. So, like, it's all interconnected. I mean, they live in an incredibly small town. Everything's going to be interconnected in one way or another. But, like, it just being something that came from the community, I think it makes sense that it would come from the Hob, which is the place where the Covey used to play their music, right? Like, I think it can be poetic in any way you want to make it poetic. And that's the whole point, right? It's a symbol. You can basically say, like, hey, this is why this has meaning to me or to the revolution or to Katniss, right?
Yeah.
And then the people around her who are going to be using her as a propaganda machine, they're like, we know exactly how to leverage that moment and leverage that symbol that just happens to have come with her.
That's a beautiful symbol. Let's make it count.
Yeah. And then also, like, then where do you start to draw the line about what kind of information we're passing along, right? I mean, this is the same reason that Madge isn't there. It's like, that's great, but, like, what are we going to do? Is Gale going to say, like, hey, let's leave and go to your other best friend, Madge, who is the mayor's daughter, and we can trade?
We love Madge in this house, but but I think it was the right call. And having Madge does complicate the picture of the districts that they're trying to establish visually.
Right.
because she's the mayor's daughter, she is living a nicer life. I wouldn't say it's probably extraordinary. I'd say it's probably solidly lower middle class. But having that visual language of, oh, some people here are doing okay would be very confusing. And we don't actually need to know, like, the relationship between the district and the capital does not need to be complicated for this entire first book and first movie. Because this is Katniss surviving as Katniss does. There's no rebellion. There's no sort of connection with other districts. This is just, what's District 12 like? What is Katniss's life in District 12 like? And then now she's interacting with the capital.
Yeah, and who is her antagonist? It's the Capitol. Like, she doesn't really care about establishing the nuances of the peacekeepers and the fact that the peacekeepers will let them get away with. Like, it's not relevant to establishing that right now in the film, but in the books, at least we get a little bit of it. But she's also like, doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah,
right? Like,
the
they're
peacekeepers.
there, they pay me when I have things to trade.
Yeah.
And they don't kill me for hunting because sometimes they eat the things I hunt.
Yeah, and we're going to be in the district for all of 3 seconds, so like the test rate doesn't necessarily matter for the movie because we're moving on. We've already established that the capital is extremely controlling and also just sucks these districts dry.
And we'll get it later on.
Yes. Yeah, as far as the movie's concerned, we have a reaping to get to, and we have to get there as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, if you don't get the information now, we might get it later in the film. We're just exchanging for flow of information. So we establish the Meadow song because that's important to establish, but we lose out on, things like Madge or the tesserae system. So then she trades at the Hob, and we get another shot of the district. We see a mom getting her son ready, holding him tight. This is actually our first look at the peacekeepers walking through the streets in their all-white armor with their masks. And then we see Prim being dressed up, calling out to her mom.
Who we never get named. In the 3 books and 4 movies we get, she does not get named until Sunrise on the Reaping.
That's wild.
Katniss is like, that's not for you. Her name is Mom. She is Mom. She's the woman who birthed me, right?
And something that I noticed in the movie is that in this section, we will not get Katniss's name for the first 20 minutes of the film. We do get it in the book. She says it to herself after Gale calls her catnip. She goes, my real name is Katniss. He just calls me that for these reasons. But we will not get Katniss's name until the Reaping when she says that her name is Katniss Everdeen on stage. But it's important because it's something that in the books is really important to Katniss is that she doesn't really give people's names at all. Like, she would not give you Prim's name if the capital is not about to forcibly take it in the Reaping from her. Like, she'd be like, that's my little sister, that's baby girl. Like, she doesn't give us her mom's name. She doesn't give us her dad's name. She doesn't want to give us her name. Not really. Like, Gale calls her by a nickname. So names are, like, really significant. It's important, too, because Katniss later doesn't name any of the other district tributes. Like, she doesn't know any of their names. That's why we get Foxface, right? Like, she doesn't bother to learn them for a variety of reasons. But part of that is a thematic thing.
Yeah, and she's in this community that knows her really well. So it wouldn't be anyone, like maybe someone would like say, hey Katniss or something like that.
Yeah. Even the scene that in the Hob, the lady she's trading with just says, thank you, girl. She doesn't say thank you, Katniss. She calls her girl. So it was just interesting. I had never noticed that we don't get Katniss's name. But anyways, her mom doesn't get a chance to say anything because Katniss walks in, and you can see that her mom, Paula Malcolmson is the actress. I had to look that up and remember her name.
She's good.
Because she's amazing in this. But you just see her immediately be like, okay, I need to take a step back and let Katniss have this moment with Prim. Even though it's like, that's her daughter. Like, she's like, I'll take a step back and let Katniss come in. Katniss comes in, doesn't look at her mom, comes up to Prim and says, like, you look beautiful, but you better tuck in that tail, little duck. And you can just hear the difference in how she's talking to her versus her attitude, where we've been with her for the last couple of minutes. And when her mom tells her that she also laid out something for her to see, Katniss is down on her knees, kneeling in front of Prim, refuses to turn around and look at her mom, just says, okay, to Prim. And then it cuts to her bathing. You see that they have no running water in this house. And then the great J-Law moment where she sees the dress that's been laid out for her by her mom. And you can tell that she just has no idea how to feel about it. She's kind of looking at it like, I don't know, like, do I accept this gift? Like, you can tell that it takes her a bit to be like, I don't know what to do. And then it cuts to her mom putting her hair up in a similar braid bun to what she is currently wearing. And she says, now you look beautiful too. And Katniss again will not address her. She won't speak to her directly at all until we get to the goodbye scene later on after the reaping. But Katniss turns away every chance she gets from her mom. And it's just great acting from both Paula and from Jennifer Lawrence, because they don't say anything to each other, but man, does it speak volumes on screen
It's
about what
so
their relationship is
uncomfortable
like.
to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are like, ooh, there is a history here, and it is not good.
Yeah.
It's a bad
Because
time.
we get pages of it in the first chapter of Katniss being like, maybe I should stop holding this grudge against my mom, but I can't because she like abandoned us to starve to death. And so while I'm trying to be more forgiving, I'm not a very forgiving person. I just think that they really captured that so well in this scene.
Yeah, I mean, her mom is trying so hard. But also, the way that they shot in, the way that we've already established Katniss is like one of the most competent people, that in the district. Her mom's feels so small in comparison. Yeah, just in
Yeah.
this scene, it's wild. I mean, Katniss is fully controlling this conversation and how everything flows. It's just a masterclass, I think, really in establishing something with no, it's show not tell.
Yeah.
Do you know offhand, and or if it's ever even established, how much time has passed since her father died, Katniss' father died, to now? Because after, the father passed, then mom spiraled into depression. How long has it been since she's risen out of that? Is this still a very fresh wound, or is it because it's Katniss, she just holds on to that grudge?
Yeah. I think we know that she was just shy of 12 when Peeta throws her the bread, because she is not yet old enough to enter the Tesserae system in order to get food for her and Prim. So they're just like withering away, and she hates her mom because no matter how much she's begging her to help them, they're starving to death, and there's nothing she can do about it because she can't even get Tesserae. But you know what? I think deserved. It's like her mom is kind of just letting them starve. I get it. She's in like a deep, deep depression that Katniss will
Yeah,
later
like
on understand, but yeah.
yeah, it will later. Katniss will be in those same shoes, but
Yeah.
it is a pretty reasonable grudge, but it's also a pretty reasonable crash out on the mom side. So
Yeah. Yeah. And even more so when you get to Sunrise on the Reaping and you kind of understand fully the context of what's going on and what she gave up in
Yeah.
her life to kind of be there. So we won't talk about it specifically, but read Sunrise on the Reaping. It's crazy. Uh, speaking of Sunrise on the Reaping, now we're going to the Reaping. Katniss gives Prim the Mockingjay pin, where she's trying to tell her, like, this is meant to keep you safe. Don't worry. We're going to each other after, right? And then they walk over to the reaping, and we see the peacekeepers standing charge, just crowds of people, mostly kids, just walking into the square. It's dead quiet besides like the shuffling of feet. I think there's zero music happening at this point. Clearly everyone looks more clean than before. They're dressed in their best clothes, but they all still look so worn down spiritually and like so nervous. Most of the kids have their arms crossed or are holding each other in some way. And Prim starts to have like an anxiety attack, and it stands out so much because like literally nobody is speaking. Like nobody else is talking, everybody else is dead quiet, and Katniss has to kind of like pull her out of the crowd, calm her down to comfort her, telling her to go with all the other little kids so that you know that they can't stand together.
But in the books, Prim is not worried about herself. Prim is worried that Katniss is going to get reaped because her name is already in so many times. So they're not worrying about Prim at all. They're like, Prim's fine. It's totally fine. Everything's chill. Nothing bad could ever happen. And in the movies, they establish it. Obviously, when Prim wakes up screaming, it's because she thinks that she got picked for the reaping. So we're really focused on all their fear that Prim is going to be picked.
It's also her fear of being picked is in relation to she would be leaving Prim.
Yes, exactly.
And then you see them being funneled into like pens, kind of like animals in the shot. And when Prim walks up to the peacekeeper to get checked in and they prick her finger for the blood, they're basically saying nothing to her until they're done. And then they're like, go stand, okay, go over there. Right. It's just so utilitarian, which is obviously the point. And then the capital coal sign in the background, the cleanest looking thing there. And then Katniss kind of finds Gale, catches his eye across the crowd, so you can see that they're having to stand in different areas as well. And he mouths, it's okay at her. People come out onto the stage. There's a really fancy looking mic compared to everything else that is in here. And we get, welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Hunger Games, and may the odds be ever in your favor. On top of the dead silence. Nobody's talking. There's no music. It's just her up there, which is amazing. She announces we have a very special film brought to you all the way from the Capitol. And President Snow is narrating this film. We have not yet seen him or met him, but super significant to the fact that he is the one who basically is going to announce what are the Hunger Games and what am I doing to the districts, essentially.
Fantastic choice to change it to a propaganda film instead of the mayor reading, because the mayor reading, in the books is important, but it is also boring, and it's not really. Katniss is not really listening. Like, we get some exposition, but this is really the film here needs to establish the games like actually fully, so that the audience understands the consequence of being picked.
Yeah, we get the war, terrible war. The images of the nuclear bomb, 13 districts rebelled against the country that fed them, loved them, protected them. And then came the peace, hard fought, sorely won. And then you get the more peaceful images, but freedom comes at a cost. And so it was declared that each year the various districts of Panem would offer up in tribute one young man and woman. And we get images of what looked like barely clothed young adults, not kids, people clearly like in their 20s. Kind of like posing for the camera. They're like, the woman is in like a sports bra and like spandex,
Yeah,
and the
very
guy's like,
Greco-Roman. Like,
yes,
these are gladiators.
yes, exactly. And like for the honor of representing their district and like showing off strength and like all this other stuff. And you're like, look at these compared to the kids they're getting shots of the kids in the crowd who do not look anything like that.
Nope.
Like, that's not how they would be going in. The lone victor, bathed in riches, would serve as a reminder of our generosity and our forgiveness. And with Effie mouthing along to the last part, this is how we remember our past. This is how we safeguard our future. Oh, I just love that. I love that line. Such a good delivery.
Effie, just truly extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's so funny because she is like such a stark contrast in literally every bit of her in this film, in this part of the scene, or just really in general. But she's so chipper and happy, while everyone else looks rightfully so like it's the worst day in their life.
Yeah.
And this strange propaganda film that she is just like, hell yeah, let's go. Let's go,
Yeah, like
Capital.
fully bought in the same way that
Yes.
like Seneca was fully bought in at the beginning, where he's like, this is a way to knit our country together. It's needed, just like it safeguard our future, right? Like Effie really truly buys into all of that. And you can see it, and then the shots of the crowd, you're like, they do not buy that at all.
No.
Yeah. And I think it matches the line in the book on page 19 where it says, whatever words they use, the real message is clear. Look how we take your children and sacrifice them, and there's nothing you can do. And I think this really captures that in a way with having the Propo film, instead of having somebody boring just get up there and clearly also not want to be there and also not want to be sending these kids, because now it feels like we're going to do it no matter what. Like, we're going to come take your kids. And it just feels so much more insidious.
Oh, yeah, especially framing it as like, here's how we show our generosity. And you're like, one kid out of 24 lives? Like, I don't know. I have some questions.
I also think it's interesting that he describes the country that fed them, loved them, protected them, because that's what Katniss does for Prim, right?
Yes.
And that is how Snow is trying to frame the capital to the districts, but it's like, that's not what you're doing, right? That's such a heavy contrast to what we see what Katniss is actually doing for Prim.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, we're seeing the capital trying to serve in this parental role, but just completely taking advantage of. Like it's a very unequal relationship. I don't
Yeah.
It's bad.
'Tis bad indeed.
It's bad indeed.
This is a parent you would, go no contact with. Like, I'm sorry, you cannot call me.
100%. I think you'd win any court battle.
Yeah. And then this is our only mention of District 13 in the movies until later on. Not in this movie. I don't think we get it again. Maybe in Catching Fire. Well, we get it in Catching Fire at the very, very, very end.
At the very end.
Yeah. Because Katniss doesn't care at this point.
No, she does not want anything to do with the rebellion. She wants to survive. And joining the rebellion is a great way to die.
The only context she gives you in the book anyways is that they just use that as another way to be like, and look what happens if you don't agree with us. We'll just blow you up like we blew up 13, which is foreshadowing, but it's not really foreshadowing we need in this movie, right? Because this movie as a standalone isn't going to have anything to do with District 13. So the fact that they mention it in the propo, you're like, good enough,
Yeah, I mean, in this movie, we need the existence of the other districts because we're going to see their kids. We need to understand the capital and District 12's relationship, but we really don't need anything else besides that because the whole rebellion, everything external to just the games, doesn't happen until Catching Fire.
Yeah. And nothing rebellious is going to happen in this section that we're covering right now anyways, because the first rebellious thing that's going to happen is when Katniss volunteers. But before she volunteers, the thing that has to happen is that Effie, still super smiley, has to say, now the time has come to select one courageous young man and woman for the honor of representing District 12 in the 74th annual Hunger Games, which is the first time we understand that this is how long the Hunger Games have been going on, right?
We also love stretching the definition of man and woman. Shout out Effie for looking at this group of literally children and being like, yeah.
And they've changed that language because in the books, Katniss is like boy and girl. Like she always calls them boy and girl, but in the films, they will always call them man and woman, which is for obvious reason, right? And then ladies first. And she physically has to walk over, pull off her glove, reach into an actual physical bowl, pull out a slip of paper. Like they could have automated all of this, right? They clearly have the technology. Like why do you have a bowl of actual printed names? First of all, what a waste of paper. Not that the Capitol cares about that kind of thing. No. But like such a waste,
And the way that her hand goes in and swirls is like so ugh.
So icky. Like she's so excited to pick the name, and she walks back slowly, so quiet. The scene is done so well, the vibes are done so well.
The sound of her heels is so
but it's just vibes, because that's really what you're getting when you have it in the visual medium, especially. But you get Primrose Everdeen, which is also the last two words of the chapter.
And then nothing bad ever happens again. And it's fine.
Everything is so good. We're also going to leave off on the cliffhanger that the chapter leaves off on, which I thought was so great at the time. That's like your hook is that first chapter, right? And
the first 20 minutes are getting to this point because, we've established the basics of this world. Now we have some characters that we potentially care about, but we need buy-in at this particular moment to then have that sort of Prim has only one name in there. We've established that immediately, and then she's the one that's picked.
Yeah, and the way that they build the tension in the book, right, is that Katniss is just like, it can't be me, like, I'm just so nervous, yada yada. I'll read the last line here. The crowd draws in a collective breath, and then you can hear a pin drop. And I'm feeling nauseous and so desperately hoping that it's not me, that it's not me, that it's not me. Effie Trinket crosses back to the podium, smooths the slip of paper, and reads out the name in a clear voice. And it's not me. It's Primrose Everdeen. So good, like in the way that they build tension here. And in the way they do it in the movie is just that it's doing this thing ever since they get into the town, really ever since the movie opens, is that the tension is just doing this the whole time. You're like, what's going to happen? What is going on? The Capitol seems awful. They take out Haymitch because even Katniss says this in the book is like, you know what happens next is that then when Haymitch comes out super drunk, almost knocks off Effie's wig, the tension does this, it just immediately collapses, and even Katniss is like, oh, at least one funny thing happened today. But it's like it would have just killed all of the tension, because what you need is that rise in tension coming off of the Bravo film.
Yeah, you can't break it immediately. That would prevent the buy-in from the viewer.
Yeah. And that's where we're gonna end. Is where we're not quite at the inciting incident yet. We're getting there. You could call Prim's name getting called the inciting incident, but really it's when Katniss volunteers for her in the next bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would call it the inciting incident because you can pretty well assume, even though we don't understand that there's a volunteer system, because no one ever does that in District 12, as soon as Prim's name is called out, you know that it's Katniss.
Yeah. And you also know that, like, even if for whatever reason there was no volunteering system, Katniss is going to join the rebellion. Like, so one of two things is going to happen. Either she's taking her place in some way, shape, or form, or she's going to burn the Capitol to the ground. Like, those are your two options when Prim's name gets called. So, like, say you were reading this week to week, chapter by chapter, and you were to stop there and really, like, if it was a TV series and that's the cliffhanger, and you're like, what's going to happen next? You're like, well, Katniss is going to kill them.
Yeah.
You know? So something's happening because Prim's name gets called.
Absolutely.
So overall thoughts on the opener?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really fun going back because, you know, we've lived in the world of the Hunger Games for so long that I forget how it's introduced.
Yeah.
And how quickly it established itself. This is not a long book. It's not a long movie. But in the first, like, 20 minutes, I mean, we have essentially the whole world that we need to know. Everything else that we learn later is bonuses and fleshes it out, but we have the entire structure of the games. We have the entire structure of the capital and the district systems. We've even met the peacekeepers and, you know, like, shown the difference between Effie and the districts and stuff. Like, this is an extremely well established and well set out world that we can immediately jump into, because we won't come back to District 12 until the end of the book, sort of.
Yeah. In the movie, they literally just wave at each other at the very end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Princess wave.
Yeah.
Elbow, elbow, wrist, wrist. Elbow, elbow, wrist, wrist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, we don't need anything more from this because we're going to be immediately thrown into the capital, but we need to understand the districts before we essentially never see them again.
Yeah. And like we were talking about, you're getting a trade of information. So some stuff we're going to set up earlier because we're establishing certain themes now because we won't be able to establish them later. And Suzanne Collins is a scriptwriter, right? Like that's what she does. That's what she did before she was writing the books. And she clearly knows how to whittle down to just like the most pertinent information. And any extraneous details in this moment are either going to get pushed to later on, or it's going to be something that is just cut out entirely, right? Because
just
you don't need it.
No, and I think that's one of the biggest keys of adapting is removing stuff. Like, yes, love the tie-in with Madge, love Greasy Say, but ultimately, to get this movie complete, they're not necessary. And maybe that'll hurt, you know, Sunrise on the Reaping's portrayal because that's tied more into the history of the districts. But you know,
I think the thing that'll be tough about Sunrise on the Reaping is that Haymitch is a yapper. He'll tell you anything you want to know. Oh, is that Katniss's mom and dad? Guess what? Here's how they started dating. And you're like, oh my God, we didn't even know that that her mom had a name.
Yeah.
And the whole time that we've known her, she had a name? Who knew? Because Katniss sure didn't tell us. I think that's going to be hard to
going from Katniss's I will not say anything, I will just think really hard and get lost in my own head to Haymitch that's just like, hey guys,
well, Haymitch had a good life for what you could assume in the scene compared to Katniss, because his mom did not fall apart when his dad died, and her mom did. So that's like a big difference. Mommy issues, you know? Usually it's daddy issues, but it was definitely mommy issues here.
Well, I think Katniss kind of has both, but
you know, that's fair.
We haven't gotten to those yet.
Yeah. And I think that at the end of the day, again, you're getting what you need to really establish all of these themes and get us through this stuff. And like some of it gets pushed out really long, like the pita and the bread. We don't get the full context of that scene until Mockingjay Part 2 in the movies.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. We get parts of it throughout, but like the part where we learn that he definitely burned the bread on purpose, we don't get until Mockingjay Part 2. And I don't know, I can't remember where we get it in the books.
I think we get it immediately. I have to, because I think she later at school, she says like, oh yeah, it took me a while to realize that he may have done that on purpose.
Yeah, okay, so because she is thinking through it. We're going to get this in the next section.
She's like, why would you do that?
Yeah. Tune in next week when we talk so much about PETA and Katniss's inability to understand any thought that he's ever had in his entire life.
I love Katniss.
I love her so much. I know that everybody memes on it all the time, but the fact that she is like, oh my gosh, PETA has like great eyelashes and everybody must be doing all this rebellion stuff because he's like the best person ever, but like I don't know why he would ever care about me. And you're like, girl, you're in love with him. You love him.
Yeah, she's like, I have no friends, but Madge and I sit together at lunch every day.
Every day, and she's the only person I talk to, and she always seeks me out, and she's always nice to me, but I don't think we're friends.
Oh, poor Katniss.
Yeah. And also I think that, you know, if people have ideas for how could you have written a scene differently, or how could you have gotten Madge in there, because like everybody loves Madge, even though we only got like 10% of her in the books, you know, how would you have written that in? Because I don't see a way to do it, which I think is the biggest. There's some stuff I think that I can see a way of like, how could you have added this, right? Or how could you have given maybe some other context? But I think at the end of the day, that's a really hard thing to do. Like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, it's super hard.
Yeah. And some things are going to come out, like great themes and things like that are being paralleled in ways that maybe are intentional or not intentional. But that's the great thing about like well-written stories, right? I remember my sister asking me one time, do you really think that the authors meant for all of that to be connected and then meant for it to be connected in the same thematic way in the movies? And it's like, probably not. But when you have a really well-written story, those themes are going to come through. Like the thing about the names, like Katniss not naming people. I had never noticed it in the movie, that we don't get Katniss's name for a long time, and that she doesn't give her mom's name for forever. But then when you look back at it, you're like, oh, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, that's just, you know, there's a certain, I don't know, je ne sais quoi, some magic to stories where this is told so heavily in Katniss's head that things like that will come out just by the author living within Katniss's head. Like, Katniss is such an established character within the author that little things like that will come out unintentionally or intentionally.
Yeah. And J-Law loves the books, so she's going to be able to bring that to the acting, which obviously helps as well.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of seems like the Hunger Games have this unique thing where, or maybe not unique, but everyone that works on it loves the books.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is not necessary by any means, but is very
cool. Both Elizabeth Banks and Donald Sutherland wrote Gary Ross letters, and they were like, excuse me, here's everything I know about the character. Here's why I'm going to play them. Here's why I'm going to play them this way. And the Donald Sutherland letters lead to the reason that we get the Rose Garden scenes with Snow later. Like they were not going to put those in. That was not originally in the script. And he was like, hello, here are all of my thoughts about this character. And they were like, oh my God, we should put the character in the movie more. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, the beauty of, books are a collaborative effort. You have a publisher, you have an editor, you have, an author. But like movies are quite literally a collaborative. You are getting hundreds of people in a room to tell this story. So there's a lot of magic in that adaptation that, these people or crew can bring out within the story itself.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us this time around. Not sure that we're going to do it this way every single time. This is the establishing episode for us. It's the establishing bit for the book and for the film, in that there is so much going on that needs to be discussed, but we'll likely be able to cover more ground in the future and get through. So join us next time, where we're going to talk about volunteering, PETA, and Haymitch, who we did not get in this section. So we'll see you next week, however often we're gonna do these. We don't know.
We shall find out.
We shall find out. Join us as we figure it out.
Perfect.